right. And so, yes, please keep your videos on. Let's participate. We have a small group today, but we're going to cover some really great information with each other. As I mentioned, we do have a set of predetermined questions that we've provided to our panelists today to give them a little prep time on some of the things that we're going to be asking. But we hope that we have time at the end of our session that you all are able to ask questions that are on your minds as those develop throughout our session together today. And at the end, we want to save a little bit of time. We have some raffle prizes to give away. Very excited about that. So we'll save a little time at the end for that as well. So any questions before we get the ball rolling? Okay, wonderful. So again, my name is Amy Odom, and I'm a career coach in business career services. We have some fantastic panelists with us today. We have Crystal Donahue from United. We have Trinice Collins from Herc Rentals, and Charis Nunez from E&J Gallo Winery. And last but not least, we have Janel Monroe from Campbell Soup Company. And so they are going to answer some questions today about employee resource groups and why they're so fabulous. But first, I want you each to introduce yourselves, give us a little bit of background, educational, career backgrounds, and the companies and your positions that you're in today. So Charis, would you like to get us started?
Why, sure, it'd be a pleasure. Hello, everyone. I'm Charis Nunez, proud Mountaineer graduating class of 2009. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Let's hear it for the 09ers. Just kidding. So happy to always be back in any way, shape, or form with App State. After I graduated, I went to go work for the E&J Gallo Winery, where I have been ever since. Started in sales and then went into management. I spent the past almost 3 years in recruiting and have been able to bring some lovely Mountaineers into the Gallo family. And now I'm calling corporately on Kroger for the winery across 5 different divisions. I think it's about 17 states. And am all about the customer world now, selling directly to corporate. So I'm very happy to be here with you guys today. I am a part of 3 ERGs at Gallo. We have 7. I'll talk a lot about them later. I'm so just proud of having this conversation. I had never heard of an employee resource group when I was in many of your seats. So you're getting ahead of the game here today. So I hope you find it useful, and I'm looking forward to learning from my other panelists as well. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Charis. Janelle, you want to go next?
Yeah, I'll jump in there. So I am also a North Carolina girl through and through, even though I now reside in Philadelphia, but I'm joining you from Fayetteville, North Carolina. I actually came down to visit my family, so I was born and raised in Fayetteville. I am a graduate, 2010 graduate of UNC Chapel Hill. Got that 09 national championship for our basketball team, which was amazing. And then I actually graduated and worked in Charlotte for 2 years teaching middle school. Then went to, I'm going to date myself here, went to Accenture and worked as a consultant for 7 years in our strategy practice, and then got poached by my client, which was Campbell Soup Company, to come work for them in HR to do executive development, and very quickly moved into the inclusion and diversity space. So I work really trying to create an environment, inclusive environment that has diverse representation at our company and makes everyone feel valued and supported to be their true selves at work. So I'm excited to be here with you guys. I love talking to students. Ask us all the hard questions. As I read these questions, Amy, I was like, oh, I got this. But I'm ready for the hard balls that you guys are going to throw at us. So happy to
I'm going to let them ask the hard ones. So then I'm the good guy, right?
Sounds good. But yeah, looking forward to it.
Wonderful. All right, Trinice, you're up next.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Trinice Collins. I am a campus recruitment lead with Herc Rentals. I've been with the company now for a little bit over 3 years. My background's a little bit different. So I military, went quite a bit around the world, if you would. After we retired from the military, so I'm dating myself quite a bit, but after my husband retired from the military, we moved around all across the globe. And I've always been in the recruitment space. One of the things that I love doing is actually building a DE&I framework for organizations that are doing it from the ground up. So with no framework in place, and really kind of bringing in diversity and inclusion and equity, true equity within an organization. So those are some of the things that I love to do, of which we're working through those steps now with my current employer. We do have a couple ERG or affinity groups that I'm a part of, and of course we'll touch on some of those, but there's a lot that still remains to be built and developed and grow. So we'll touch on those as well, but very, very excited to be here. And I am really looking forward to learning from everyone.
Wonderful. Thanks for being here, Trinice. And last but not least, we have Crystal Donahue.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Crystal. I work with United Rentals. I've been with them a little over 7 years now, starting with them in a sales role as well. Was in that position for about 1 year to 2 years before I moved over to our corporate HR side of the business. Primarily focusing a lot on college recruitment and talking with students, just like everyone here on our Zoom session today. Really excited, just like some of the other panelists said, that this conversation is being had. Since I've joined the company, we've always had our 3 employee resource groups that we'll talk about, but just last year, we actually had our first inclusion and diversity manager put into place. So we are evolving in that way, and excited to see really what's going to come of that over the next couple of years as they put a focus on that. So we've worked with App State for quite some time now. Wish you could be there in person, but happy to still do this over Zoom. So looking forward to our conversation today. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for those quick introductions. I wish we had more time together to do a little deeper dive on those, but hey, maybe that's what Friday at the Career Connections event is for, right, guys? You see where I'm going with all this? All right, perfect. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with our first question. And I will address one of you, but I encourage you all to chime in with your perspectives on each of these questions. So Trinice, let's start with you. What are the benefits to a company and their employees to providing and participating in employee resource groups?
So I think that is, for me, I look at it as all a part of transitioning that individual into a new foreign environment. So that's the benefit of ERG groups or affinity groups, whichever term you want to use. But it's a great way to not only introduce someone to who their fellow employees are, but it's a wonderful way of including them in discussions, right? We all define diversity and inclusion very differently. I think someone defined diversity as, counting the numbers, and another person defined inclusion as, making the numbers count. And there are varied amount of definitions thrown out there, but ERG groups allow you to feel like you fit in. If you imagine yourself coming into a new environment where you know no one except for the hiring manager that, talked a great talk and got you excited. Now you're through the door. Now what? So that's what, affinity groups allow you to do. It allows you to introduce you to the company itself and what they're about and how you fit in, and help you to define whether or not they've made a room for you, at this dinner table. So, for me, it's extremely important, and it's important that the company put thought into ERG groups as well before it's kind of rolled out.
That's great.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think for people in those kind of marginalized groups that ERGs traditionally serve, it really is such a great opportunity for community. At Gallo, there's not the majority of people who look like me. So it was really great to be able to walk into the Gallo African American Network ERG and be like, oh, hey, what's up, sis? That was kind of cool. So it's community. It's also a safe place, I think, to have hard conversations. I think a lot of ERGs really led a lot of those hard conversations across all kinds of organizations over the past year. I think ERGs are a great platform for education and allyship for people who maybe aren't African American in the Gallo African American Network, right? You've got to have really authentic allies and people who want to learn to really affect change. I think that's really important. At Gallo, we really believe strongly that, ERGs are also a great way to solve business problems, support people in their personal and professional goals, And we also use our resource groups for recruiting and retention purposes as well. So a lot of multifaceted opportunities that all kind of roll up into ERGs. But those are just a few ideas and benefits, I think, for our company and ERGs.
Yeah, I'll jump in too, just to add a couple more. So I think from my aspect, like improving culture, it does improve culture, right? We're allowing people to feel like they can bring their full selves, or not full selves, or authentic or real selves to work. And I think for our company, one of the like aspects that I didn't really realize when I was participating in an ERG, and now that I'm in an IND role and an HR role, I'm actually able to see how much influence you have, right? So as a new hire at Accenture, I was in our new hire ERG and our African American ERG, and I was really not sure and wasn't really seeing how much leadership actually comes to the new hire ERG and says, what do you guys need? What do you want? What was missing? What was lacking? So we're able to kind of build that for the next people that are coming in. Same with our affinity groups, or ERGs is what we call them at Campbell's. Now we're able to go to the Latino network and say, look, our employee engagement scores look like this for you. Why is that? Like, what's the anecdote? Tell us the stories. Help us understand what we can do to make your group feel like they belong here, because that's what we're actually going after. So I think there's actually a connection and an influence that ERGs also provide to the companies that we work for.
And I agree, a lot of great things were said already, but I know just a couple additional things to add. I think Charis said community. That's something that I think is really important, and kind of feeling like you have that support, whether it be when you first join an organization or at any point that you're in an organization, knowing that you kind of have that support from an ERG group that you may be a part of, or an ERG group that you can join. We also use a lot of our ERG groups for personal and professional development and really promoting some of those career opportunities. And I think this will come out in some of the other questions, but I work in an industry that is very male dominant, in the construction industry, right? So purpose of our ERG group is to make sure that we're providing those opportunities for those non-males within our organization, right? And making sure that the women within our organization feel like they have those same type of opportunities as everybody else in the organization as well.
I'll jump on that because Crystal and I are in very similar spaces. And in fact, our Women in Action group, or female focused ERG, it's one of the first ones that we create. So it's really important that organization, like I said before, put some thought into the ERGs. You know, for Crystal and I, within that male dominated sport, if you would, having a place where you can offload your mental for that day is extremely important. It makes or breaks you being able to bring, like we all say, your total self to work. So really put some thought into it.
Thank you for that. And students, I encourage you to think about, what are those connector points for you at school, right? So I know for me, I'm the advisor to Women of Walker, which I've made my own employee resource group in the Walker College of Business. So a place for females to connect with one another. And so think about where those opportunities are now for you, to prime you for seeking out those opportunities when you start researching and looking for companies that you're interested in working for. So thanks for those great introductions to, what an employee resource group is, because I think maybe some people logged into this and they're like, I don't really know what she's talking about, but we'll give it a try, right? So next question, what are the types of ERGs that you can expect to find in an organization?
I can jump in first here. So I think primarily a lot of the ERGs are based on demographic identification, right? So you think race and ethnicity, or culture, gender, sexual orientation, you kind of have that. But I think a lot of companies, and this is a question later on, but I'll kind of, give a little foreshadowing to it. A lot of companies are starting to question, like, what other types of employee resource groups are going to allow people to feel like they can bring a part of themselves to the job that they couldn't before, right? And so now I'm starting to see a lot of environmental sustainability ERGs for companies. At my last company, we had one that was all about volunteerism. So like there's a volunteer ERG. So I think, like, as we start to think about it, we have one, obviously Campbell Soup is a food company. So we actually have one called Roots that's all about our food heritage and our founders of the food and why they were doing it, and making sure that all employees feel connection to the food that we're creating, and the food that we're sourcing and things like that. And so I think there's a lot of demographic, but there's now starting to be a lot more interest-based ERGs, and I'm interested to see what the other panelists have or have heard of in their jobs.
Yeah, I would definitely, I love that Roots. That's really cool. I kind of want to come be a part of that. Do they let outsiders in? I'm coming.
You have good food.
I love that. We at Gallo have 7 ERGs. We have one called Women of Wine and Spirits, or WOWs, that's focused obviously on the women in the industry, as we are also a very male dominated industry, believe it or not. I think when you think wine, you think, you know, women, but middle-aged white men run the world of wine and spirits, believe it or not. We also have the Gallo African American Network, or GAN. I sit on the leadership board of both of those. We also have an ERG for our LGBTQ plus community. We have one for our Gallo veterans, we call it the Gallo Veterans Organization, Asia for our Asian community, La Casa for our Hispanic community. And we also have an additional ERG called Enable that really honors our disabled family members within the Gallo organization. And we do have a sustainability club too, which is kind of fun. So I like to hear that that's happening other places. And each of the ERGs are all focused on, you know, really serving those communities. And I love what one of the other panelists said about having opportunities to serve, because as much as ERG should be helping the organization, they should also be serving the communities. And so I love that aspect as well. So that's what we do at Gallo.
And for us, I know one of the ERGs that we currently have is focused on our veterans. So we've got quite a bit of veterans. Like I said before, my husband is a vet. We've got recruiters who are vets, active and retired or separated. We have our branch managers, some of our DMs. So we've got a really healthy populations of veterans. And so we focus on celebrating that, on welcoming it, on transition, on, you know, how can we help beyond just a paycheck. So we really do focus on the integration and the inclusion of our veteran communities within our organization, and also outside of it in our community, as Charis said as well. Charis, sorry.
Thank you for it's Charis, but it's okay.
Charis.
No problem.
I am not going to get that wrong again. Okay. I will put $1 in the jar if I do. Oh gosh. Yes.
I'm going to be rich after this. I'm just kidding.
I know, right?
I just wanted to say thank you so much for your service and your husband's service. I know everyone on this call truly appreciates you guys. So thank you.
Absolutely. Crystal, anything you want to add to that one?
Yeah, I'll just add a couple of quick things. I mean, a lot of similar things being said, but I think that's those are groups that a lot of organizations are focusing on for a reason. So United, here at United, we have 3 ERG groups: Women United, we have Veteran United as well. And then our third one is actually called Together United. And that's more of an ERG group where just all employees can come together to really build a more diverse, inclusive, and also empowering workplace. So in all of our ERG groups, anyone can join. You don't have to be a female to join our Women United, but that Together United one is really our, big ERG group for anyone that wants to kind of focus on more of that diversity and inclusion within our company.
Can I add one thing onto what Crystal just said? Because I think that's really huge together, because you really can't do anything unless you've got a bunch of folks, right? So I am a half Black, half white young lady. Am I still young? Can I say still young? Okay, thank you for that.
Absolutely.
And I married a he's all Hispanic, but he's half Argentinian, half Peruvian man. So I joined La Casa at Gallo, even though I am not Hispanic and come from a completely different background, but it's been a really great education tool for me as the world sees my children as little Hispanic girls, right? And I don't know what it's like to be a Hispanic female. I had a Black mother who I could look to and say, oh, I have a strong Black woman in my life. as an example, but I can't be that for my girls in the same way as my mom was for me. So I think it's a really powerful thing to not just join an ERG group because you need community of people who look like you, but you might find yourself in different, phases of life where like it really helps you to understand really how that community values not just whatever field you're in, but what are the basic values of the entire community that might make or break how you interact with them. It's definitely been a huge help for me in my personal life and not just my professional life. So yeah, you don't have to always be a part, if that makes sense. Like you don't have to identify as X, Y, or Z to really benefit from being a part of an ERG. So Crystal,
Yeah.
like that togetherness, it's important.
So I will jump on that because, I know, of course, we have students on, but that is a very, very good point for those that are listening, because if you're a white male listening in and you join an organization that only has maybe a women-focused ERG or a African-American or a Latinx ERG, and you're like, well, there's no place for me. Yes, there is. If you look at photos, because some, you may not remember the Martin Luther King March, it just was not a bunch of African Americans marching down the street. There were a plethora of different skin color and just different, statuses that were arms in arms. So it's extremely important that we act as a community, and that if you find your place, join a group, get to know your colleagues that look different or act different than you do. You do not need to be the same gender to join a male, focus group or a female focus group. So that's a really good point, and that actually will open up doors for you as well within that community.
Really great points, ladies. Thank you. Oftentimes when we're in person, I will do a women in business panel discussion, and I invite everyone to that table because it is just as important for men to be at that table as it is for women to hear those perspectives and to bring those perspectives in. So yeah, it's join other groups that aren't necessarily within your own. I think that's the best way to learn about these other areas. So that's fantastic points. Thank you. And Dr. Jamie Parson, can I put you on the spot for a second? Because I meant to introduce you earlier and I didn't, and it wasn't on purpose, but we have a really special person in our midst today. Dr. Jamie Parson is with us. She is a faculty member in the Walker College of Business, but she also is a part of our Inclusive Excellence team in the Walker College of Business. So she's here today listening in, and I bet she's got some great insights if you want to pipe in at some point too. Not to put you on the spot, but just so you know, she's with us here today. So, all right. So let's keep on trucking. Let's see. Next question. How can ERGs contribute to an inclusive culture in the workplace? And I think we've touched on this, but if you have any extra nuggets you want to add there?
Yeah, I think I jumped on it earlier when I talked about the influence that a lot of our ERGs have on our leadership and on our company in general. But I think also is like there's an idea of education that the ERGs provide and around like what Charis was saying and others, like around like cultural nuances, right? Like there are reasons and there are obstacles that people are facing and that you may not see if you're not in that group, right? And so I'll give an example of this is our open group, which is our Pride employee network at Campbell's. Went to one of the meetings, and one of the meetings said, I hate that I'm in meetings, client meetings, and they say, oh, your wife. And the person was like, I have a husband, right? And he explained that he's been very like apprehensive about putting pictures of his husband on his desk and things like that. But having been in the open group, he was able to share his truth, right? And then also it allowed me to actually understand, like I also use the word now partner. I don't use the word husband or wife and make that assumption when I'm talking to someone. So it was like a cultural understanding for me as well. And I think like that builds to that inclusive culture that everyone feels like they can bring a true version of themselves to work.
I will jump on that because I think, one of the things that I've been thinking about for a very long time especially with, ERG groups is, and this is one of the reasons why they when they work, they do work very well, is that it helps to create this psychological safety, if you would, within a organization. And it does it on a very small scale, right? You see thousands of people within an organization. Well, affinity or ERG groups, it creates small pockets where individuals feel safe and they can bring their whole self. Maybe you can't do it in a large scale. However, you have this safe space. And it eventually it starts branching out into different pockets without, different work groups. So ERGs are, they are a direct descendant of creating an inclusive environment. Especially if they work really well, it's a direct line towards inclusivity for sure.
Yeah, and I'll add on one thing too. I think really a large contribution of it is learning about other people in your organization as well. So actively listening to them, learning about them, and understanding those differences too, right? We understand that everybody's different. So recognizing and understanding those differences is really important. And I also think that a lot of diversity and inclusion can also lead to innovation. I heard this. We actually had a diversity speaker at one of our annual management meetings, and I loved this example, and it was a true story. I'm going to forget the actual company that it was from, but they gave an example. It was a fuel or a gas company, I don't know, Exxon or something like that. And they had, this was obviously from a while ago, they had recently hired a young female onto their team, their product development and marketing team. And there was a conversation, and she said, we need to do something different about gas stations and how you interact at a gas tank. And she said, if I have my children with me, it's a hassle. I have to get out of the car. I have to unbuckle my children because I can't leave them in the car. I have to bring them next to me at the gas station. I have to go into the gas station to pay for it, then come back, finish fueling, put them back in the car. And it's like a 10-step process just for me to get gas. And she said, why can't we just pay at the pump? Why can't we just use a credit card and pay at the pump and be done with it that way? And that was, I don't know exactly how true this story is, but what a great example to hear. Again, someone who is different in that male dominant industry, and hearing from a young mother, female, that was new to their organization, and listening to their perspective and what they deal with and the challenges that they deal with on a day-to-day. And how they can use that to better themselves as a company.
I like this question a lot. Can you guys hear me? I'm having like internet issues. Okay, it was spinning. I was like trying to connect on my phone really fast too. Great. So I love when people talk about inclusion and diversity as separate entities, because I think a lot of times they get lumped together as if they're the same thing. And the equity piece that Treneice was talking about earlier is equally as important. So I love that there's kind of a focus on just inclusion. I think a lot of the times inclusion is the harder piece to D&I, because it constantly, every single time, forces you outside of yourself. Essentially, to be inclusive, you have to recognize, oh, okay, like maybe I don't have all the answers. Maybe I don't know and need to sit and listen and learn. It's like a muscle that almost needs to be exercised. But the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it, the stronger you get, which is great. And, I think when you really make an effort to be inclusive of other people, to say, hey, maybe I'll use the term partner and not wife or husband or something like that, you're really actively taking action, which is really the main piece of inclusion. You have to act. You can't just sit around and be like, oh, I'm being an inclusive person. But the more you get to know others, the more you're really able to understand the differences, but then also appreciate the similarities. You probably will find that you got a lot more in common than you think. And that's an easier space to grow from than differences a lot of times. They say in the next, 20 years, America will be for the first time ever considered a minority majority, which means there'll be more people of the minority groups than the current majority groups, which gives every organization a really big opportunity to get to really know what's valuable to whoever your customer or consumer is, and make sure you've got people in your organization that mirror that so that you're not left behind, right? You can't sell on the most basic level anything to anyone if you don't understand what they value. And I love seeing now that companies are valuing inclusive spaces more than ever and are taking action to really build that. And ERGs are a huge piece of the success of how that's actually happening from the inside out.
Those are great points, Charis. Thank you. So we can hear you great. You are frozen, or at least you are for me. So, and you have a very serious look on your face, but I think it just pushes your point through of what you're saying. Just so you know, if you need to tweak that. All right. So now we know the great benefits of ERGs. What are some pitfalls that you have found maybe in some of your experiences in participating in those?
I can touch on that, and I actually think it's something we already touched on. And I think one of the initial pitfalls is making sure somebody doesn't feel excluded from one of our ERG groups, right? So we just talked about before having a Women United group, but we encourage males to join our group. We encourage anyone in our company be a part of that group. Again, we have our Veteran United group. That's something I'm a part of. I'm not a veteran. I'm not active military or anything like that, but it's still a group that I think is a really good benefit to be a part of. So that's one pitfall to just look out for, is make sure no one feels excluded from your ERG groups that you're having, and make it known and make it feel welcoming to anyone that wants to join.
Yep, I think I would add to that is on the flip side of a person who's leading an ERG or working in an ERG, because a lot of times they're volunteer opportunities, right? And so you have to recognize that you're volunteering to better your company and make an inclusive space, and you may not get recognized monetarily. You may not even get recognized verbally from people, right, for the work that you're putting in. But I think, there's always the balance, and that you guys as students recognize this. There's your schoolwork, and then there's the extracurriculars that you're in. This is absolutely the equivalent of an extracurricular that you're in, that you can gain valuable skills and development and leadership opportunities and exposure. But you also have to make sure that the thing that you're doing as your day-to-day job, like I often would say when I was in the ERGs, as like a member, I say, this is my passion job. So that my ERG is my passion job, but I have my actual day-to-day job that I have to make sure that, like, that's what's getting me paid. That's what's paying the bills. But my passion job is what's actually filling me up and making me feel like it's a meaningful job. So that's, I think, a pitfall for people as they're in ERGs, is they put so much into the ERG that sometimes they forget about their day job. And you got to make sure, you're still making that, making those dollars and doing the work that you need to do to be a good employee.
Am I still frozen, Amy? I switched over. To piggyback off that, I think from an organizational point of view, I think it's really important not to get to the pitfall of ERGs are the only source instead of a resource. I know that a lot of people in the communities that a lot of the ERGs serve, they're used to being asked to speak for the majority, right, of the people who are like them. I've been put in positions, not necessarily at Gallo, where as a Black woman, people ask me questions and expect me to answer as if, like, I know what every Black woman thinks, right? Like, that's not probably realistic. So I think from organizational point of view, it's use your ERGs as resources, but not the only source. Make sure you're investing in outside resources as well, and really partnering those resources with what you're getting out of your ERGs. And then for the folks that are actually, in leadership roles within those ERGs, I know sometimes you get so passionate about your work, and you might forget about that day job a little bit. Maybe you're not equally as passionate about your day job, but I think it's also really, really important to recognize that it's still a part of the overall organization. I know, in GAN, sometimes we joke about, like, we're our own little company, or, we have our own little identity, but it's to service the greater good of the of the organization and not just the ERG. So just a couple of areas where I think people can get a little bit stuck on accident when it comes to pitfalls.
I think for one of the things, and it's on the two sides of the coin on how ERG's success are measured. So, and what I mean by that is it's the level of engagement. It's easy for organizations to look only on the numerical value, who's attending, how many people, what events are you doing? How are you involved in individuals? Who came to speak this month? How many attended that? So there's definitely numerical values associated and tagged to ERGs, and that is normally translated into their success. But it's crucial that we measure engagement, which is measured very differently as well, right? And that goes back to the inclusion of benefits that ERG provides. So I think that's one of the pitfalls, is it's really easy to see the numerical value and count that as success and forget about the individual engagement piece that really should be the most important part of it, and especially for students that are going into organizations that do have these ERG programs. It is nice to know that you are counted as an individual, not just as a number associated with that ERG.
That is great. And speaking of, what are some activities that one could expect to participate in an ERG?
Yeah, so our ERGs are kind of grounded in 3 pillars. So we do talent, culture, and marketplace are kind of our 3 areas that we have that most of our ERGs plan their programming around. And if you think about talent, a lot of that is like goal setting, helping people understand what goal setting and their self-assessment. Everybody, when you get into the workforce, has like some sort of performance review, right? So it's like, how do you actually, and our HR folks partner a lot of times with our ERGs to say, like, look, here's some tips and tricks on how to get ahead. Here's some things we know. We know women and people that are underrepresented often undersell their performance. They say, I helped with this, instead of saying, I did this, right? So they're giving us those tips and giving us that as we go through performance. So that's kind of the talent. So we look at culture, a lot of it is like commemorative programming. We just finished Black History Month. We just started Women's History Month, and International Women's Day is on Monday. So a lot of those programs that we're doing are really focused on how do we educate the community and the whole workforce on, Black history, on women's history, and what International Women's Day is. So some of that is around our culture aspect. And then as far as marketplace, it looks kind of twofold. It's either one, maybe volunteer events that we do. So maybe Dress for Success, or something with food insecurity, because we are a food company. But also, I think on the flip side of that is kind of like, what ways can we help the business? And I think, Crystal, you were making an example, and I thought you were going to go here, but maybe it's not as well known as I thought. But our Asian network, actually, we have a chip. We have Kettle Brain as one of our brands. So if you guys have ever had kettle chips, keep buying them. They're really delicious. But we have a Korean barbecue flavor, and they actually had some Korean characters on the bottom of the bag. And our ERG was actually able to say, hey, I know that's what you think that says, and it does say that, but a better way to say this to market to consumers is to put this on here, right? So our ERG was actually able to make a very strong business impact on our product packaging, right? So that's a connection with like our R&D and marketing. So there's a lot, like I said, that talent, culture, and marketplace is kind of how you'll see at Campbell's, and a lot of places. Accenture did the same thing around programming.
Great. Anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll say very similar, as Janel was saying, we do a lot of community service too, that's maybe focused to one of really the focuses of that group. So example, for our Veteran United group, we do a lot of volunteer work specifically with the Fisher House. Or specifically with Wounded Warrior Project. So that volunteer work, I think, is also really important part of an ERG. Definitely personal professional development as well. But that volunteer work, I think, for a lot of people too, is where they get a lot of that reward and that fulfillment out of a position as well. So that is also a large part of our ERG groups here.
One additional activity that we have in GAN specifically, the Gallo African American Network, is we have a mentorship program. So when you come into our organization, say you graduate from App State and you come work for Gallo, you go work inside of one of our local distributor partners, you have the opportunity to not only get a mentor in our sales leadership development program, which is going to be geographically based because you want to be able to like meet up with that person. But you also have the opportunity to opt in into an ERG mentorship program as well, where you get an additional mentor who looks like you, which is really cool. I think if I had come in to the wine business 12 years ago and had someone who had literally walked a mile in my shoes, maybe some of the same like activities of, my peers, in terms of like sales and calling on accounts and things like that, the different things that I encountered as a Black female versus maybe what my, Caucasian white peers that dealt with might have been a little different, right? So you've got that extra layer of support to really say, how did you, handle this scenario or this question or this issue? And so I think that's really, really helpful as well. So definitely ditto a lot of what other people are saying. But I think mentorship is super, super important as well.
Yeah, I love that addition. And again, it's just for the students on this call, as you were researching companies, ask these questions. I think it's super important for you to find your niche and the company that aligns with what's important to you personally, to ask some of these questions about mentorship, about employee resource groups. So you're happy with where you hang your hat at the end of the day. So we only have 5 minutes left together. I told you that it would go by super duper fast. I have a couple more questions on my list, but I want to open up the floor if we have any students here that have questions of things that we haven't covered yet. And you can put those in the chat box or raise your little like animated virtual hand or like your real one that's attached to your body.
This is the fun part. This is when you get to throw us all the hardball questions that you don't want, to ask.
All right, Jamie says, can you speak about upper management support and participation in ERGs?
I'll take that one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because it's really important, right? If you can't measure it and you can't hold people accountable to it, it's probably not going to happen. And there's no better person to, hold people accountable than your boss or your boss's boss. Each of our ERGs has an executive sponsor. So whether you're the vice president, the CEO, the chief, marketing officer, like Stephanie Gallo is our CMO, and she is the executive sponsor for our LGBTQ+ community. And I won't name names for all of the different organizations, but they are super involved when it comes to supporting and being authentic allies in the ERG process.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think there's like some structured leadership that we have. Like we have all of our chief leadership teams. So like our CEO, our CFO, our CHRO, hopefully these terms are not jargon to you guys, but they all support at least one of our ERGs. And then underneath them, we have our like leadership teams. We have leadership team representation in our ERGs. But I think also, Charis, to your point, like participation, right? And I would say that generally what I've seen is that the younger people participate a lot, and then the older you get in your career, it gets a little bit, you start to do other things and get pulled in a lot of different directions. So the participation is a little bit less, but like for those events, like I was saying with like Black History Month or our Women's History Month, like our leaders are there. They're like, this is the best part of my job. They really enjoy it. So I do think we have leader representation at events and also structurally in leadership structures.
People vote with their feet, right? What's important to them. So when your leadership is showing up to these types of events, that's showing the organization that it's important. So we do have a question from Colby. He says, what would be a good way to propose this to a company you're involved in, especially if you're not in a position of power?
Yeah,
great question.
I would say for us, like as we have people that are trying to do these small things, it's kind of like just propose it. I'd like to start this type of group. Can I get your support? And like a lot of times you have to go to like a business lead to get some support because you need the dough sometimes to get these things started. But like, I feel like especially within HR, we're looking for ways, our HR function, to connect with employees on ways besides employee relations and telling you to get your goals and OKRs in, right? We call them OKRs, objective and key results. So I think, proposing it to leadership and just sharing and making sure you kind of have a critical mass of people that want to be involved is a great way to propose it to the company.
I think if you can tie it into what the company values as well, you're going to have a higher likelihood of getting what you want, right? What's valuable. My dad used to always say, Charis, you can't bring value unless you know it's valuable. It's kind of simple, but it really goes a long way. So, how can you align what you want out of that ERG that you're building with what the company's values are as well? How can you line them up with the pillars that the organization is working towards? Because then you're bringing a resource and not just a request to, to take, right? It's something that you're going to be able to give the organization. And that's also really huge too. ERGs are not just about take from the organization. You should be giving. And I think several panelists talked about almost being BRGs or business resource groups, and really helping make sure that your organization is not tone deaf or, has massive blind spots that it's kind of working within. To the Asian symbol piece, I think that was awesome. So my 2 cents.
Thank you. All right. So we are almost out of time. We have 1 minute, and I want to save a minute so we can give away some prizes to our panelists to our participants that were here with us today. So Taylor, you have the ability to do a quick share screen? And I believe we have three giveaways, one from E&J, one from Herc, and one from United, correct?
Yes, we have 3. So
Okay.
I will spin it 3 times.
Okay, and as the winners, when you find out who you are, if you will message Taylor directly with your mailing address and your email address. Madeline Coughlin, looks like you are our first winner. Awesome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, if you'll just message Taylor Mack with your contact information, we will get that in the mail to you. Uh-oh, Madeline, you can't win twice. So let's, Taylor, if you will remove.
Oh, okay. I'll do that. Oh my God.
Because she's going to win again.
Yeah.
Greg.
Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get it off.
That's okay. Madeline, I think you need to go play the lottery. All right. Colby is our second winner. Great job, Colby. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Make sure that you message Taylor Mack with your contact information. And last one. Here we go. It's Isabella. Yay. Awesome. All right. Again, thank you so much for your time, your talents, your perspectives today that you provided to us. I know that I learned a lot about employee resource groups. So we appreciate you and look forward to seeing you at the rest of our events this week.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, guys. Nice to meet everyone.
Go Nears.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, have a good one.
Bye, guys. Thank you. Thanks so much. Yay. All
Hey,
right.
I wasn't sure if I did mailing address to Taylor or my email.
Mailing, because we're actually going to mail you something.
Okay, cool. I'll do that right now.
Awesome. And then Taylor, are you capturing that and going to send it
Yes.
to
So I will go ahead and should I just send these to you in an email or?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. Alrighty.
All righty. Thanks, guys. That was a really good session.
That was
Thank you,
amazing.
Amy.
I
All right.
really
Y'all have a good one. Cool. Bye.
Okay.
Bye.